The sky in the sky is always dusty, like a piece of unwashed rag, which makes people unable to breathe. Qingyun Sect is located on the top of this mountain in the front of the mainland. It is called a sect. In fact, there are not even a singular mountain gate. There are only a crooked stone tablet with the 3 words Qingyun Sect engraved on it. It is blowing the sun and I can't see the painting clearly. The disciples in the sect included only 100 people, most of them were young people with low cultivation. Even the old were not as good as the food they sent from several villages at the foot of the mountain to survive. Lin Rongrong squatted on a large stone on the back mountain of the sect, holding a dead branch in his hand, and casually painting a circle on the ground. He was wearing a long white-blue robe, his hair was casually woven, his face was a bit tired, his eyes were as sharp as a knife. He is only 17 years old this year and is already the most outstanding disciple of Qingyun Sect. He practices 9-level cultivation, and puts it in this broken place, and is simply a group of erect chickens. But he knew in his heart that if he put this practice outside, he would not even have to stuff his teeth. "Yuan, are you in this situation again?" An old voice came from behind, with a few sarcastic comments. Lin Luo didn't have to look back to know who he was, the only elder of Qingyun Sect who was a little famous, and he was also his master. The old man was wearing a torn Taoist robe and full of beards. He looked like he wanted to eat, but his eyes always hid something that was unclear, which made people unable to guess. "Master, I'm not stupid." Lin Xian threw away the dead branches in his hand, stood up and patted the dust on his body. "I'm thinking, if we don't find a way out, we may not be able to afford the rice for the next month." The Qing Dusher smiled and walked to him, squinted at the clouds far away. "What's the hurry? There's always a way out in the mountains and waters, and I might have arrived tomorrow." Lin Rong rolled his eyes and said to himself that the old man started running the train again. Qingyun Sect was so angry that he was not able to compete with the qualifications of participating in the Tianjin list test of the Immortal Alliance. The so-called Tianjuan list is a rule set by the Immortal Alliance. The trial is held every 3 years. The major sects send disciples to compete for the rankings. Only the top sects can get spiritual resources. Spiritual sage, that is something that immortals dream of dreaming of. To say that a spiritual sage can make people's cultivation violently and understand the laws of heaven. But in a small and broken place like Qingyun Sect, there is no trace of the soul, so where can we fight for the bottom of the situation? "Master, don't tease me." Lin Rong curled his lips. "We are so thin that we are as strong as drinking porridge. Where is the trouble? If you don't go out to have sex, your disciple will not be able to touch the roots." After hearing this, the smile on his face stopped. After a while, he was silent. He said in a low voice, "Shua, some things are not something that is not done, but that the time has not arrived. Remember, although the Qingyun Sect is small, it is not a matter of being clean. One day, you will understand what this means." Lin Rong was stunned for a moment, and wanted to ask clearly. The Qing Dusher had turned around and walked down the mountain with his back, leaving only a sudden sentence, "Come to my place tonight, I will tell you something." The night was getting thick, and a dim oil lamp was lit in the courtyard of the Qingyun Sect's back mountain. Lin Luo opened Qing Dusher's door, and a herb smell came over the noodles. The room was a mess, and the table was filled with old books and some incredible miscellaneous objects. Qing Du Taoist sat on a broken puppet group with his legs, holding a black little jade bottle in his hand, and was lowering his head. "Master, what's the matter with me?" Lin Rong found a place to sit down, and his eyes couldn't help but glance at the jade bottle. This thing looked inconspicuous, but he always felt a little unfavorable, as if he was emitting an indescribable breath. The Qing Dusher raised his head, and his face was much more solemn than during the day. He sent the jade bottle to Lin Luo and said in a low voice, "This thing was something I picked up in the deep mountains a few days ago. You can feel it carefully. What's inside?" Lin Rong picked up the jade bottle and bought the ice cream, as if holding a piece of ice. He closed his eyes and stole a long spiritual consciousness into the bottle. The next moment, the brain seemed to explode. A vast and unparalleled breath instantly rushed towards him, as if he was in the sea of stars without a trace, and there was a sound of dragon chanting in his ears. He suddenly opened his eyes, his face turned pale, and the jade bottle in his hand almost fell to the ground. What is this? Lin Lian's voice was a little terrifying. He had never felt such a powerful force. He practiced his 9-level cultivation in front of this breath, just like an elephant facing an elephant. Qingdu Taoist's eyes were complicated and he said in a deep voice, "If I hadn't guessed, what was sealed in this bottle was a dome of a dome." "Sure use spirit?" Lin Luo's eyes widened, and his brain buzzed. The spirit of the dome is the most mysterious legend in the Jiuxiao land. It can be said that it can be controlled by all the worlds, and even the Immortal Alliance is salivating about it. But how could this kind of thing appear in such a broken place as Qingyun Sect? "Don't ask me how I came, I don't know." The Qingdu Taoist slammed his hand and smiled bitterly on his face. "I only know that when this thing comes out, our Qingyun Sect will probably be in trouble with marijuana. If the people from the Immortal Alliance know the whereabouts of this breath, we will have no waste of this little broken sect." Lin Rong felt tight in his heart, and his hand holding the jade bottle couldn't help but exert a little force. Although he was young, he also understood the weight of this thing. The Immortal Alliance is the most powerful force in Jiuxiao. On the surface, it maintains peace in the immortal world, but in fact it is a big thing that can eat people and not spit bones. A small sect like Qingyun Sect is not even considered a pistol in the eyes of others. If you are targeted, the consequences will be unimaginable. Then what should we do? Throw this thing? Lin Lian gritted his teeth. Although he was unwilling to let go, he didn't want the sect to be defeated because this thing was completely defeated. "Don't throw it away? It's too late." Qing Dusher shook his head, stood up and walked to the window, opened the window and looked at the night sky far away. "Since I discovered this breath, I will tell you that it has something to do with Qingyun Sect. What's more, this thing may have something to do with you." "It has anything to do with me?" Lin Rong was stunned and asked with his face. He is just a young disciple in his training period, so why would he get involved with the things in this story? The Qingdu Taoist turned around, and a meaningful light flashed in his eyes. "Let's go. Do you know your life experience?" Lin Rong was shaking his head. He grew up in Qingyun Sect since he was a child. He heard that he was the orphan who was brought back from the foot of the mountain. He had never asked about his specific life experience and no one mentioned it. "Your blood is not simple." Qingdu Taoist opened his mouth quietly and his voice was low. "When I came to you, you had a strange spirit on your body. I have been observing these years and found that your cultivation speed is extremely high, and even at some times, it will inadvertently activate the power of heaven and earth. The breath in this bottle is intimately shared with the power in your body." Lin Rong heard a fog of water, but a sense of anxiety in his heart was inexplicably filled with anxiety. He looked down at the jade bottle in his hand, and recalled the vast air in his brain. In the confrontation, it seemed that something was really summoning him. "Master, what do you mean?" He raised his head and tried to ask. "I mean, this thing cannot be thrown or hidden." Qing Dusher stopped him, and his language was determined. "Since it appears in Qingyun Sect, it is the will of heaven. You have to take it, leave here, find a safe place, and find out what is going on in the dragon." "Leave?" Lin Lian was shocked. He never thought of leaving Qingyun Sect. Although it was broken here, it was the place where he grew up. "Yes, leave." Qing Dusher pointed a little, and a faint feeling appeared on his face. The people of the Immortal Alliance will long ago realize this. Staying here will only cause the entire sect to be intensive. You go, carry this bottle and find a way to your own. The future of Qingyun Sect may be on you." Lin Luo was silent, and his fingers holding the jade bottle turned slightly white. He knew that the teacher had a reasonable point, but he was still a little unwilling to accept it. What to worry about? What small place like Qingyun Sect, do you have no qualifications to take a breath? Why do they have to be trampled under the foot of the Immortal Alliance? "Master, what will happen to the sect if I leave?" He raised his head, with a stubborn voice in his voice. The Qingdu Taoist smiled and patted his shoulder. "I'm not dead yet, you don't have to worry about the affairs of the clan. Remember, don't be moved after going out. Saving your life is more important than anything else. At this moment, a rapid sound of footsteps suddenly came from far away. Then, an elderly disciple stumbled into the yard and shouted in panic, old man, it's not good." A group of people came down from the mountain, saying that they were messengers of the Immortal Alliance, and wanted to see the sect leader. Lin Luo and Qin Dushi looked at each other, and their faces changed at the same time. Why do people from the Immortal Alliance suddenly come to such a place where birds don't poop? Come on, pack up your things and leave now. Qin Dushi shouted softly, turned around and grabbed a jade token from the table and stuffed it into his hand. This is my token, which can save your life when the key is focused. There is a small path in the back mountain, which leads straight to the outside of the mountain. Don't turn around. Lin Luo's heartbeat was beating fast. He knew that things were not right, but he seemed to be stolen and could not move at all. He looked at the back of the Qingdu Taoist, and a feeling of indescribable sorrow suddenly surged in his heart. Master, I. He opened his mouth and was pushed hard by the Taoist Qing, and he stepped back a few steps. Go! Don't waste your time. Lin Luo bit his teeth tightly, held the jade bottle and the token, turned around and ran out of the courtyard, and ran towards the back mountain without looking back. The night wind slashed on his face, stinging like a knife, but his heart hurt even more. He didn't know if he could come back this time, nor did he know if the Qingyun Sect could survive this disaster. At the same time, at the entrance of Qingyun Mountain, a group of people in white robes were standing coldly, headed by a young man with a handsome face and a sense of arrogance. Following him with a few extraordinary vigor, the jade plaque hanging around his waist was engraved with the word Immortal Alliance, which was the logo of the Immortal Alliance. The Qingyun Sect's people are not coming out to greet me? The young man sneered, full of disdain. Did you think you can hide from me by hiding it? The Qin Dushi walked out of the mountain gate, with a hurried smile on his face and bowed. I don't know that the messenger of the Immortal Alliance has failed to meet, so I'll forgive you. The young man glanced at him, his mouth slightly raised, and a meaningful smile appeared. Old man, don't waste your time. I heard that you have gained something you shouldn't have recently. If you hand over it, maybe I can still save you. The Qingdu Taoist's face froze and thought to himself that something was wrong, but he didn't speak loudly on his face and said with a smile. The messenger laughed. My Qingyun Sect is so scared that I am. Where is the treasure from? Oh? Is that? The young man narrowed his eyes and suddenly a strong breath burst out from his body, which made the air around him silence. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being rude. Search. With his order, the rest behind him immediately scattered and rushed into the sect. Qingdu Taoist stood there, his face as deep as water, and his hands tightly clenched, his fists in his sleeves. He knew that Qingyun Sect would not be able to hide from this. At this time, Lin Rong had already run deeper into the mountains. Under the night, he gasped, stopped and looked back. In the direction of Qingyun Sect far away, there were hidden fire lights, and several powerful breaths rose from the sky. His heart tightened, and his fingers holding the jade bottle were almost pinching and bleeding. Immortal Alliance. He gritted his teeth, his voice filled with hatred. One day, I will make you pay for the price. At night, Lin Lu turned around, walked towards the unknown road ahead. He didn't know what he would encounter next, nor what the breath in this jade bottle meant, but he understood that from this moment on, his fate had completely changed. Lin Rongran stumbled on the path behind the mountain. The night was as thick as it could be poured out. The stones under his feet kept squeezing him from time to time, but he didn't dare to stop or turn back. In the direction of Qingyun Sect, there was a fire that was reflected in the sky for half of the sky, and there were also several powerful waves of spirits coming from time to time, as if someone was fighting. His heart was like a knife, and he wanted to go back and see what happened to Master Zun and the sect's brothers and sisters, but he wisely told him that going back would be a death. The practice of the 9-level cultivation level is nothing in the eyes of those in the Immortal Alliance. He tightly held the black jade bottle in his hand, and the jade token that the master stuffed him. His steps became heavier and heavier. He was so familiar with the path in the back mountain that he could not be more familiar with. He usually sneaked with his brothers and sisters, but he felt that every step was like stepping on the tip of a knife. Night wind shaved across his ears, bringing a loud shout of confusing far away. He gritted his teeth and forced himself not to listen or think, and just run forward. After running for most of the time, the direction of Qingyun Sect finally disappeared from the visual line, and only a dark forest was left around, which was so quiet that people panic. Lin Luo stopped and gasped with his heavy breathing against an old tree, sweating heavily and dripping down the edges. His clothes had long been broken by the thorns. He looked down at the jade bottle in his hand, and his heart was filled with scent. What is this thing? Why do people from the Immortal Alliance suddenly come to the door? Master said that this breath has something to do with his blood, but why didn't he feel it all? No, you can't waste it here. He wiped the sweat from his face and gritted his teeth and stood up straight. Master asked him to leave the Qingyun Sect and find a safe place to find out the jade bottle to go along, but now there is no safe place in this Jiuxiao land. The power of the Immortal Alliance is spread all over the world. They can target small sects like Qingyun Sect. Where can he, a kid in his training period, hide? Just as Uxi's mind, a slight movement suddenly came from a distance, as if someone had stepped on the dead branches. Lin Rong felt tight in his heart. Lima held his breath, squatted down quietly behind the tree, and he carefully poked out. After a while, several figures walked out from Lin Zishan, wearing a uniform gray robe and a jade plaque engraved with the word Immortal Alliance on their waists. They were obviously from the Immortal Alliance. Damn it, why are there pursuers? Lin Rong was secretly snatched in his heart, and his hand holding the jade bottle couldn't help but tighten it. These people have not had low cultivation, and the weakest one is full of training. The one in the head is even more breathing in the early stage of the foundation, which makes his mind feel a little bit ill. He knew that if he was discovered, he would never be able to escape. Head, can that kid really run so far? One of the men in the gray robe curled their lips, with impatient voice in their voice. What kind of tough things can be there in the broken place of Qingyun Sect? We won't have a waste of time, right? Stop talking. The leader of the monk Jingji snorted coldly, glanced at the forest around his eyes as cold as a poisonous snake. As mentioned above, the breath of that thing has appeared nearby. Whether there is or not, search for details. If that kid runs away, we will have to go away. Lin Luo was shocked when he heard it, and his brain was flying fast. Looking at this battle, the people from the Immortal Alliance were determined to find the jade bottle in his hand. It was estimated that the Qingyun Sect had already been turned toward the sky. He gritted his teeth, quietly took a few steps back, intending to walk over these people and continue running. But the foot just opened and accidentally stepped on a dead branch, and a crisp click sounded. Who is there? The leader of the monk Jingji suddenly turned over, his eyes locked in the direction of Lin Luo's hiding, and a powerful wave of spirit burst out instantly. It's bad. Lin Rong's heart sank. He knew that he could not hide anymore, so he gritted his teeth and rushed out from behind the tree, running towards Lin Zishan without looking back. Chasing. Don't let him run away. Cultivator Suji shouted loudly and immediately chased after him with several subordinates. Several spiritual forces turned into a long rainbow, tearing the night sky and approaching Lin Luo. Lin Luo ran so hard that his lungs were almost blown up, but the people behind him were much faster than him, and they narrowed the distance in a short while. He was as anxious as a hot pot. He realized that there was a secret cave anywhere, so he couldn't think about it anymore, so he drew in it. The cave was so dark that I couldn't see my 5 fingers, and the air was filled with a damp and musty smell. Lin Luo gasped against the cave wall, suppressing his breath as much as possible, and at the same time, he kept his spiritual consciousness to a minimum, praying that those people could not find it. The sound of the steps outside was getting closer and closer, and with several impatient curses, it was obvious that they had reached the entrance of the cave. Head, can people hide in this broken place? A man in gray robe kicked the stone on the ground, full of disdain. Don't underestimate these country boys, slid like mud. The monk Suji sneered, his mind scattered like a net, carefully sweeping every inch of the surrounding area. Lin Luo felt that the spirit had passed the place where he was hiding, and his heartbeat was almost stopped, but he forced himself to bite his teeth and remain silent. At this moment, a low voice suddenly came from outside the cave in trance. Who is that sneaky? Lin Rong was stunned and immediately heard a rapid fight, as if someone had moved. He poked out carefully, and with the faint moonlight, he saw a delicate figure outside the entrance of the cave, fighting against the people from the Immortal Alliance. The man was wearing a long light blue dress, his movements were as sensitive as a swallow, and a delicate drama in his hand was dancing tightly, and a cold chill was hidden in the drama. Is it a woman? Lin Rong narrowed his eyes and realized that this woman's cultivation was not low. In the early stage of the Qi, Ling Ji, the sword-like man in gray robe forced a few people in gray robe to retreat. The head monk Jingji's face was dark, and he raised his hand to exhale a black light, turning into a long whip and thrust hard towards the woman, but her figure flashed and easily avoided. At the same time, he stabbed out with a backhand, forcing the other party to retreat. Head, this girl is not easy to mess with. Let's take it away. A man in gray robe snatched a sword and shouted over his shoulders. Waste. The monk Jingji shouted, gritted his teeth and glared at the woman, and finally let his hand down unwillingly. Go. Several people turned around and disappeared into the night in the blink of an eye. The woman in the blue skirt did not chase after her. She put away her delicate snail, turned her head and looked towards the cave, and opened her mouth coldly. Have you been hiding? Come out. Lin Rong's heart skipped a beat. He knew that he could not hide it anymore, so he had to walk out with his head and bowed. How grateful for the girl, I'm to help me. Lin Rong, how dare you ask the girl? The woman looked him up and down, with a few reviews in her eyes, and after a while, she opened her mouth. My name is Yun Jiqing, from Hanfrost Valley. Are you from Qingyun Sect? Lin Luo pointed a little, and was a little alert. Although this woman helped him, who knows if she didn't have any intention? After all, there are many smiling tigers in the sky. Yun Jiqing saw him face and guarded her face, and the corner of her mouth slightly raised her mouth, showing a light smile. Don't be tight, I'm not the same as the Immortal Alliance. Lin Lian was shocked, and his hands held the jade bottle in his mind, his face a little unnatural. The girl was laughing. What can I have? It's just a slutty boy who ran away. Oh? Is that right? Yun Jiqing raised her eyebrows and didn't ask anymore. She just turned around and said lightly, since that's the case, I won't care much about it. Take care of yourself. After saying that, she was about to leave after she made a step. Lin Xian looked at her back and thrust her heart for a moment, and finally gritted her teeth and shouted, Wait. Miss Yun, can we talk? Yun Jiqing stopped walking, looked back at him, and there was a flash of excitement in her eyes. What are you talking about? Lin Rong took a deep breath and knew that this was an opportunity. He is alone at the moment, and the people from the Immortal Alliance are searching for others. I am afraid that I can't get far if I rely on myself. Although this woman is unknown, she at least helped him and should not be an enemy. It's not true. I've got something. The people from the Immortal Alliance are coming to capture me. He said in a low voice, staring at Yun Jiqing's reaction. I don't know what this thing is, but it may have something to do with the spirit of the sky. I want to find a safe place to find out the truth. If Miss Yun is willing to help, I'm willing to share your benefits. Yun Jiqing heard the 4 words, her pupils slightly shrank, and she was shocked, but she quickly returned to a calm state. She was silent for a moment, and finally said, Okay, I'll help you. But I have a condition. What conditions? Lin Rong asked. After finding the trace of the spiritual sphere, I will know all the details at the first time. Yun Jiqing's temperament is unquestionable. Although my Hanfrost Valley is a small sect, I have some experience in the exploration of spiritual spheres, and I may be able to help myself. Lin Rong hesitated for a moment and pointed out, trade. The two reached an agreement, and I won't say much at this time, and I will continue to walk in the dark. Yun Jiqing seemed to be familiar with the terrain of this belt. she walked through several roads with Lin Luo and finally arrived at a secret valley before dawn. There is still plenty of spirit here, surrounded by mountains and natural mists covering the entrance, which is difficult for ordinary people to find. This is a footfall in my cold frost valley, it's safe at all times. Yun Jiqing took him into the valley and set off a few simple ways to hide his mind. You can rest first and say everything you know. Lin Rong was not polite, so he found a stone head and sat down, took out a jade bottle and placed it among the two of them, and then told everything about Qingyun Sect, including the explanation of Master Qing Dusher, and the sudden arrival of the people from the Immortal Alliance. Yun Jiqing heard it seriously, and she kept staring at the jade bottle, as if she was thinking about something. If it's really a breath of the dome, then it's going to be a big deal. She said softly, stretched out her hand and touched the jade bottle lightly, closed her eyes and felt it for a while, and then opened her eyes, her face a little solemn. This breath is really not simple, and the spirit contained in it is far more powerful than ordinary spirits, and even has the smell of the law of heaven. The laws of heaven? Lin Rong was stunned. He had heard this word, but he had never really touched it. It is said that only immortal cultivators who have integrated the top spirit can understand the laws of heaven and gain special supernatural powers. Yes. Yun Jiqing pointed and withdrew her hand. The spirit of the dome is the most mysterious existence in the great land of Jiuxiao. It is said that it is not only the source of power, but also the will of the ancient immortals. If this breath really came from the spirit of the dome, then the Immortal Alliance would never be able to calm down. On the surface, they maintained peace in the cultivation world, but actually had already cut off the resources of the spirit of the sect, which made the small sect unable to breathe. Lin Luo heard the fist tightly, and the scene of the Qingyun Sect's fire swelling into the sky appeared in the sea of brains. The hatred in his heart could not be suppressed, the Immortal Alliance. They have to pay the price. Yun Jiqing glanced at him and said lightly, "Avenge is not something that can happen overnight. Your current cultivation level cannot even touch them. The urgent task is to find out the secret of your blood when you come to the dragon and go to the sky." Lin Luo pointed a little and knew that she had made sense. He looked down at the jade bottle, and suddenly flashed what the teacher said in his brain: his blood and this breath were all together. I wonder, what does this really have to do with him? Miss Yun, you just said that Hanfrost Valley is good at exploring the spirit. Can you help me see what's going on? He raised his head, looking forward to it. Yun Jiqing didn't recommend it and pointed out, "You can try it. But I have to prepare something first. You will be here for the past few days, don't run around. The people from the Immortal Alliance are probably still searching nearby, so we have to be at a low level." In the next few days, the two of them settled down in the valley at a short while. Yun Jiqing was busy setting up some ways to explore the spirit, and took out a few broken ancient books to study them over and over again. Lin Luo took the time to repair the curtain and tried to stabilize his own cultivation. He discovered that since he held the jade bottle, the flow of power in his body seemed to be a little smoother than before, and he even had the sign of breaking through and practicing. In the evening, Yun Jiqing finally prepared everything and set up a small method in the middle of the valley. The black jade bottle was in her eyes. She let Lin Rong sit next to the stump with her legs, closed her eyes and relaxed her mind. Then she began to chant her mouth, her fingers kept marking, and ice blue lights flowed out from her fingertips and injected into the stump. Relax, don't resist. Yun Jiqing's voice was low and calm, as if carrying some kind of calm power. Lin Luo clicked his head, closed his eyes, and tried to empty his brain. Before long, he felt a gentle spirit surge out of the air, wrapping himself up slowly. Then the familiar vast breath appeared again, as if the starry sea was swallowing him without swallowing it. Some blurry pictures suddenly flashed through his brain: a huge palace floating on the 9 heavens, with countless spirits surrounding him radiating dazzling light. In the depths of the palace, a blurry figure was looking at him with his head low, his eyes as deep as if he could see through everything. "Yay, you are selected." A low voice echoed in his ears, and continued, carrying an irresistible pressure. Lin Luo suddenly opened his eyes, sweating heavily, and his chest was undulating. Yun Jiqing also stopped the action in her hand. Her face was a little pale, and it seemed that the exploration just now cost her a lot of her power. "What did you see?" she asked anxiously. Lin Rong was gasping for a heavy breath. His voice was a little sarcastic. I saw a heavenly palace, and there was a sound saying that I was the chosen one." "Miss Yun, what does this mean?" Yun Jiqing raised her eyebrows and was silent for a moment before she said softly, "If I hadn't guessed, your blood would be in touch with the spirit. That sound might be the will of the spirit that is summoning you. It is said that the spirit is not a pure resource, but an incarnation of the will of the ancient immortals, and will choose their own inheritor." "Successor?" Lin Rong was stunned by the hearing, and his brain became a group. He's just a sacred boy from a small clan. Why did he become the inheritor? "Don't worry, this is just a guess." Yun Jiqing snatched her hands. "The most important thing at the moment is to find more traces about the spiritual sphere of the dome. As far as I know, there are several ancient spheres in the Jiuxiao land, which may contain relevant secrets. We must move as quickly as possible, otherwise the people from the Immortal Alliance will come to the door soon." Lin Luo pointed a little, and a heart of struggle ignited. No matter what this inheritor means, he has to figure out the truth, not only for himself, but also for the people of Qingyun Sect. He wants to become stronger, so strong that he can make the Immortal Alliance pay the price. "Miss Yun, where are we going next stop?" he asked. Yun Jiqing smiled and pointed to the faraway, the sky-liquid Rift Valley, which is one of the oldest deserts in the Jiuxiao land. It is related to the origin of the Immortal Alliance. Perhaps, some useful things can be found. The two men packed their clothes and left the valley while the night was dark, and headed towards the direction of the fiery Rift Valley. Lin Luo held the jade bottle, his heart was both tight and looking forward to it. He didn't know what was waiting for him ahead, but there was one thing he knew very well: from this moment on, he could no longer get back. Above the 9-level sky strike, the clouds changed color, and the thunder roared in the cloud like an angry dragon, and the cracks that tore the sky were scattering with no force, as if the entire Jiuxiao was shaking at this moment. Lin Rong stood on the cliff in front of the crack, his robe was blown by the wind, his face filled with sweat and blood, and he was holding a broken long sword in his hand, and the sword still had the power wave that had just been inflamed. Behind him, Yun Jiqing half kneeled on the ground, her hand was inserted into the ground to support her body, her breath was weak, and her face was as white as paper. The two of them just joined hands to retreat to the last wave of defense of the Immortal Alliance, almost exhausting all their energy, but they knew that the real challenge was still ahead. "Shua, are you sure you want to go in?" Yun Jiqing gasped, her voice was a little sandy, and there was a slight swaying in her eyes. The 9-level heavenly strike is the most mysterious and dangerous place in the Jiuxiao land. It is said that the dome spirit is sealed in the depth of this crack, but at the same time, it is also the old nest of the ancestor Tianqing. The old monster who stood at the top of the Immortal Alliance was unpredictable to cultivate, and even their joint partners might not be able to get a little cheaper. Lin Rong turned over, grinned, revealing a bloody teeth. "What if you don't go in? You're here, you can't just fall off and run away, right?" Although his mouth was relaxed, his eyes were full of determination. From the day Qingyun Sect escaped, he knew that there was no retreat in this road. The pressure of the Immortal Alliance, the collapse of the sect, the whereabouts of the Master, and the inexplicable summons in his blood all forced him to go this far. The truth about the soul of the sky and the ancestor Tianqing were all waiting for him in this crack. Yun Jiqing bit her lip, stood up reluctantly, patted the dust on her body. "Then let's go together. Let's say, if you die in it, don't blame me for dragging you back." Her temperament was filled with some slight chorus, but her eyes must be like ice. "Don't worry, who should be dragged on?" Lin Rong laughed, put away the slap, took out the black jade bottle from it, and rubbed it lightly. The breath in the bottle is still vast and endless, as if it can break through the seal at any time and create a covetous vein with the blood inside its body. He took a deep breath, raised his head and looked at the deep crack, his eyes gradually becoming cold. "Let's go, let's meet that old monster." The two of them looked at each other and made a step at the same time, stepping into the cracks of the 9-level heavenly fracture. As soon as he entered, a biting cold wind came over his face, scattered with heavy power waves, making people almost unable to stand firm. The space around was twisted and terrifying, as if it would collapse at any time, and a deep dragon chant was irritated from afar, shaking people's eardrums. Lin Rong held the jade bottle tightly, and the spirit poked out carefully. He found that the inside of the crack looked wider than the outside, like another independent world. The countless broken floating islands floated in the air, with ancient palace scattered on it, scattering the breath of the sacred mulberry. This place is really not simple. Yun Jiqing said softly, her fingers swaying, and a blue icy light circling around her, resisting the turbulence in the crack. I can feel that the breath of the dome is right in front of me, but at the same time, there is a stronger force pressing it. It's the ancestor of Tianqing. Lin Lian said. This name gritted his teeth and a hint of anger ignited in his eyes. Over the past few days, he and Yun Jiqing traveled through major places, finally gathered the secrets of the 7 ancient sects, unzipped the seal of the 9 heavens strike, and gradually unveiled the mysteries of the Immortal Alliance. The ancestor of Tianfeng, the gang standing at the top of the immortal world, is on the surface a guardian of the Immortal Alliance. He actually secretly manipulates the distribution of spirits in secret, forcing countless small sects, and even uses the price of spiritual life as a substitution. He tried to gather all the power of spirits in his body and achieve the position of the Immortal Lord without any hesitation. And the dome spirit is the last ring he planned. The two carefully passed through floating islands, avoiding the frequent flow of space in the cracks, and finally saw a huge black sacrificial in front of them. The fort is as high as 100 feet high, and there are countless chains of locks around it. The chains are full of ancient runes, emitting a cold light. In the middle of the sacrificial sutra, a blurred figure sat on his knees, his whole body covered with black fogs, and the breath emitted was so strong that it was suffocating. And above the fortress, a huge soul shadow seemed to appear, emitting dazzling light, like the core of the entire world, which was the dome spirit. "Come here, little guy." A low and sandy voice came from the center of the sacrificial palace, carrying a skeleton. The figure in the black fog stood up slowly, revealing an old and tall face, which was the ancestor of Tianqing. He was wearing a black robe, his eyes were as dark as deep as purity, and a sneer was hanging on the corner of his mouth, as if he had expected Lin Rong to come. "Old monster, just say nothing." Lin Rong bit his teeth tightly, and his body's spirit turned wildly. The sword in his hand condensed a ray of light again, pointing directly to the ancestor of Tianyu. "You have been pressuring the immortal world for so many years, and today is your death." "Death period? Ha ha ha." The ancestor Tianqing laughed loudly, and the laughter made the whole cracker tremble. "Just like you two little babies? Lian Xianyechen's waste was solved by you. Unfortunately, in front of me, you don't even count." With a sweep of his hand, an invisible pressure exploded instantly, which made Lin Luo and Yun Jiqing kneel to the ground, and the power of the body was incomparable. Lin Luo bit his teeth and held this pressure. The familiar voice suddenly sounded in his brain, "Yea, you are the chosen one. Wake me up." He was shocked, looked down at the jade bottle in his hand, and suddenly realized that this might be his only chance. He bit his fingers suddenly, and a drop of blood dripped on the jade bottle, and then a vast breath burst out from the bottle, creating a strong coeba with the blood inside his body. "The spirit of the dome, wake me up." Lin Lian shouted, and the spirit inside his body rushed into the jade bottle. He saw a dazzling light burst out from the bottle, shooting directly into the soul shadow above the fort. The next moment, the huge spiritual shadow suddenly moved, emitting unobstructed power, and the face of the ancestor Tianqing changed. "How is that possible?" The ancestor Tianqing growled, and sealed his hands with both hands to try to make the soul awaken, but the power was too strong, and even the chains he laid were collapsing inch. The shadow of the dome gradually condensed and turned into a huge dragon of light, spinning above the fortress, and the dragon chanted and sang to the heaven and earth, shaking the entire 9-level crack of the heaven was collapsing. "Luan, take my strength." Guanglong growled and a golden light shot out from it, straight into Lin Luan's body. He only felt that an indescribable force exploded in his body, in his veins. Dantian, and even his soul were reshaped at this moment, and he practiced to break through in an instant, directly entering the divine realm from the Yuan bachelor's stage, and even touching higher levels. His eyes turned golden, and the breath emitted from his body made the ancestor Tianqing feel scared. "Old monster, you're going to be a sacrificial." Lin Rong shouted coldly. His figure flashed, and turned into a golden light that rushed towards the ancestor of Tianhuang. The sword in his hand burst out with unprecedented light, and the sword tore through the space and pointed directly at the other party's throat. Yun Jiqing also gritted her teeth and stood up, and the fine snail in her hand turned into countless ice rays, and she clamped up from the other side. "Looking for death?" The ancestor Tianqing roared angrily, and with both hands, countless black fogs turned into giant hands to meet him. However, under the blessing of the dome spirit, Lin Lu's power had exceeded his predictions. The sword light directly teared open the black fog and slapped hard on his chest, leaving a deep bone-deep mark. "Impossible. How could I give you such a little trick?" The ancestor Tianqing retreated, feeling unwilling, but Lin Rong didn't give him a chance to breathe. The second and third scenes followed one after another, and each scene was filled with the power of the dome spirit, which made him unable to resist. Yun Jiqing's ice mangling kept blocking his retreat, and the two of them cooperated without any wits. This drama is for Qingyun Sect. Lin Luo bit his teeth and saw the scene of the sect's firestorm in the sky. The back of the master, and the dead brothers. He roared angrily, and the sword light in his hand stormed into 100 feet long sword light, slashing it hard. The ancestor Tianqing roared unwillingly, and his body was swallowed by the sword light, turning into a group of black fogs and dissipated into the cracks. With the fall of the ancestor of Tianqing, the chains around the sacrificial fortification finally shattered, and the dragon of the dome's spiritual roared, turning into countless light spots and melting into every inch of the space of the 9-level heaven strike. Lin Lian felt a gentle force wrapping himself, and the low voice sounded again in his ears. "Yu Lian, you have proved yourself. The order of heaven and earth will be reshaped by you." He was stunned for a moment, and immediately felt the power in his body gradually calming down, cultivating to a stable peak at the God transformation realm, only one step away from the position of the immortal master in the legend. But he was not happy, but instead looked down at the jade bottle in his hand, his eyes chaotic. "The wind is over." Yun Jiqing walked to him, with a burst of fatigue in her voice, but more of a suddenness. She looked at the collapsed sacrificial fortress and said lightly, "Ancestor Tianqing is dead, and the Immortal Alliance has no leader. The world of cultivation should be transformed into heaven." Lin Luo clicked a little, but he didn't feel much relaxed. He knew that the spiritual power of the dome chose him, but should he really control this power? Over the years, he has seen too many people whose family has been destroyed due to spiritual warfare, and too many small sects have been struggling to survive under the pressure of the Immortal Alliance. He clamped his fists tightly and suddenly made up his mind. "Jiqing, I don't plan to occupy this power alone." He turned over his head, his eyes fixed. The spiritual celestial should not belong to any person, it should belong to the entire world of immortal cultivation. I want to spread it all over the world so that every immortal cultivator has the opportunity to touch the laws of the heavenly way and no longer be destroyed by a few people. Yun Jiqing was stunned for a moment, then smiled softly. "I knew you would choose this. However, we have to plan such a big deal, so we can't come around at will." "Of course." Lin Rong grinned and looked up at the calm sky outside the crack. The Immortal Alliance has been unfolded, but the immortal cultivation world is still a terrible group. We have to first join the small sects and rebuild a new order. And I have to go back and see the Qingyun Sect to see if the masters are still there. Yun Jiqing pointed a little, the two of them smiled at each other, and walked out of the crack. The collapse of the 9-level crack gradually stopped, and the sun shone on them from the top of the crack, as if it was putting a sentence on this long battle plan. But Lin Luo knew that this was just the beginning of another journey. After walking out of the 9 heavens cracking, the outside world has changed. News of the Immortal Alliance's collapse spread like a trend throughout the sky, and countless small sects began to be ready to try to find their place in this revolution. Lin Luo and Yun Jiqing did not rush to return to Qingyun Sect, but first contacted several trusted allies and began to rebuild the order of the immortal world. They transformed the power of the dome into countless fragments and spread to every corner of the mainland, allowing the spirit to be evenly distributed again, so that every immortal cultivator has the opportunity to grow. A few months later, Lin Rong finally set out on the way back to Qingyun Sect. When he stood in front of the familiar hill, he looked at the broken mountain door and the crooked stone tablet, and his heart was filled with mixed feelings. The sect has no longer had the noise of the past, and only a few elderly disciples are left to guard it, but when they see Lin Luo, their eyes are filled with surprise and excitement. "Look! You are still alive." An old disciple, Xiao Shui, shook his voice, and the sound of the water was shaking in his eyes. Lin Rong smiled and patted his shoulder. "I'm back. Where's the master? Is he okay?" The old disciple was silent for a moment and said in a low voice, "The old Qing dynasty. At first, in order to cover up us, he was taken away by the Immortal Alliance, and then there was no news. However, he left a message saying that if you come back, you will not look for him and keep the Qingyun Sect with peace of mind." Lin Luo's heart sank, his fists clenched and his fists chuckled, but he finally got a little bit. He knew that if the teacher was still alive, he would see him again one day. He turned around and looked at the broken sect, took a deep breath, and murmured, "Master, Qingyun Sect will not fall down again. I will let it stand up again and become the strongest sect in the Jiuxiao land." After saying that, he began to walk into the sect and began to rebuild everything. Yun Jiqing stood behind him, staring at his back quietly, and the corners of her mouth slightly raised. The sunlight seemed to bring new hope on the top of this hill, and Lin Lang's road was not far away.